Alright guys, welcome back. We are going to begin our third unit today about nationalism and unification. We're going to try to figure out what nationalism is, how it led to the unification of places like Germany and Italy. So let's get into the topic. And let's try to first figure out what nationalism even is and how it led to some revolutions in an area called the Balkans. So we're going to begin by looking at a clash of ideologies. And ideology is just kind of like a way of thinking. It's a way of it's like a philosophy basically, and there were three competing ideological belief systems going on in Europe in the 1800s, and these are going to kind of shape the events of the 1800s. And the first is we're going to call conservatism, and the people who follow conservatism would be conservatives. And conservatives typically came from upper class parts of society. People are well off, well educated, and they're resistant to change. They don't like the idea of change because change could threaten the position they're already in, which is usually at the top of society. Our next group are called liberals, and liberals tended to be more middle class than upper class. They are also well educated. Many of them are well off financially as well, and they wanted to see more democracy and political rights spread out away from just the elite and top society down to the middle classes as well. And then finally you have a group called the radicals, and the radicals want drastic change. They tended to come from the lower end of society, lower classes, working classes, and so forth. They have a lot to gain and very little to lose by demanding change, and so they want big changes. They want more equality, more democracy spread across all people. So now that we know what the difference is between those three ideologies, let's now look at the concept of nationalism and how it led to major changes across Europe. So we're first going to define the word nation. A lot of us, when we think of the word nation, you think of a country. But in this context, a nation simply means a group of people with a common unifying heritage. This nation might share a common history, religion, language, culture, or all the above. There are people that identify as a group that sets them apart from other groups. Now, today we sometimes use this term, in terms of sports. Like if I'm a big Buckeyes fan, which I am, I might be part of the Buckeye Nation, like a group of fans who really are supportive of Ohio State, or in this case, the Yankees Nation, or whatever. Again, it's a group of people who have a common identity. In this case, they're fans of the Yankees. So, let's look at some examples of this. In the country of France, you have a group of people who identify as the French. The French people are the nation. France would be the country. The Japanese people are a nation. Swiss, Brazilian people, they're nations, groups of people. Now, in some empires, what you'll see is that they are multinational, that there are lots of different nations or groups of people within that empire, and that, of course, can lead to some real problems, as we're going to find out later in this unit. So nationalism is when that nation, that group of people, have a common sense of belonging and loyalty to each other. That you put the group you identify as kind of the center of everything, and you see your group as different from other groups, and you're proud of being part of that group. That's called nationalism. So in this picture we have some Canadian nationalism going on. Nationalism is similar to patriotism. Now, a nation-state exists when that nation or a group of people have their own independent government. So in this case, these people down here are Swedish people, and the Swedish people are a nation, but the nation-state would be Sweden. In this case, Norwegian people are a nation, but their nation-state is Norway. So these are the ties that bind a nation-state together. All those factors you've been looking at, things like language and culture and religion, these are unique characteristics to that group that sets it apart from other groups. Now, nationalism can be good and bad. On the plus side, it brings people together. It's a form of unity. But on the downside, if people take their nationalism too extreme, they might start to discriminate against other nations or groups of people. We're going to see this, of course, extensively in the 20th century. Now we're going to go to a particular part of Europe and apply what we've learned. The area is called the Balkans. The Balkans is a large peninsula in southeastern Europe, basically just east of Italy. It's a very mountainous, very rugged area. And what we're going to find out is the Balkans had been ruled by the Ottoman Empire for a long time. So the Ottoman Empire started down here, and it spread south and west and northwest as well. And so the whole Balkan Peninsula, as we get into the early 1800s, had been ruled by the Ottomans for 3 centuries. And that is going to lead to some problems. These people are going to want independence, of course. Now, the Balkans itself is a very diverse place of different religions and ethnicity, and so that leads to a lot of tension among those groups in this area. And this tension between different cultural groups is a topic we're going to revisit a couple more times this year. We're going to look at how it helped cause World War I, and then towards the end of our course in the spring, we'll talk about how there was a big country right here called Yugoslavia that broke up along ethnic lines and led to some extreme violence. Now, in our first unit, we learned that Napoleon's forces had invaded Spain, and the people of Spain had risen up using what's called guerrilla warfare, a lot of ambushes, hit and run, that kind of stuff. And that tactic is going to be revived by a group of people called Serbians, or Serbs. Serbian people, they identify as a nation, as a group of people, and what they wanted is they wanted to get their independence back from the Ottoman Empire. And so they're going to rise up twice, in 1804 and 1830. And at the end of this, with Russian help, they're going to gain autonomy or self-rule from the Ottoman Empire. So not total independence, but pretty darn close to independence from the Ottomans. Again, the motivation here was nationalism. We are a different people. Let's rise up and get our land back. And nationalism also plays a role in why the Russians helped. Russians and Serbs are part of a larger ethnic group we call Slavic people. So Russians helped Serbs out of a feeling of nationalism. So if Serbia has risen up and won self-rule, the lesson, of course, for other people down in the Balkans is to do the same, to rise up. And the Greeks decided they would do this as well. They rose up in the early 1800s after a 400-year Ottoman occupation. They're going to get help from Russia, just like the Serbians had. They're also going to get help from Western Europe, who felt a kinship with ancient Greek culture, seeing ancient Greece as kind of the birth of modern Western culture, and they wanted to help them out. And ultimately, they're successful, the Greeks are, in getting independence in 1830. So, Western Europeans traveled to go fight against the Ottomans and fight for the Greeks. One good example is a guy we're going to talk about in our a little bit later. Actually, I'm sorry, we have already seen this guy, and when we were talking about Romanticism, that is Lord Byron, the British poet who died fighting for the Greek independence. So, in this topic, guys, we covered what nationalism was, nation, nation-state, all those key terms. Make sure you look back over them so you know what the difference is. And then we're going to apply these topics to unifying different pieces of Europe. But first, we've got to talk about some revolutions in Europe. That's our next video.